We're on Tzadik Beis Amid Aleph. Ready to new pair. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. Plus, we're learning we should have it based on English immediately. Before Shleima for all those who were injured. Okay. We learn like that. Dam Chatas Shenitas ala Beged. The blood of a carbon chatas that spritzed onto a garment. So Ton kibbutz requires kibbutz. Kibbutz is washing. The pasuk discusses this. Where is it? It's in where it was.
Leviticus 6:20.
Well,
that was off my head.
It's not actually the clothing becoming tame. It's the clothing. It's just like if you use a vessel.
They're really elevated.
It's funny. Very good. That's a kosher bird that's tummy. That's a kosher bird that wasn't shechted that makes the clothing tummy. This is something else. This we're talking about is someone brings a sacrifice, and they're spritzing the blood on the mizbeach, and a little bit of blood spritzes on his clothing. So the rule is that it has to be washed. So let me tell you what it says over here. Additional laws of the sin offering. God spoke to Moses saying, "Speak to Aaron and his son, saying, this is the law of the sin offering. The sin offering should be slaughtered before God in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered," that we learned. It's the most holy offering. The priest who offers it up as a sin offering should eat it. It should be eaten in a holy place, namely in the courtyard. Any food that touches its meat will become holy and thus subject to the same laws. If any blood is sprinkled on a garment, you should wash that area of the garment on which it was sprinkled in a holy place, the temple courtyard.
So they wash the clothes in the chutzner.
Yeah, in the azara. An earthenware vessel in which the meat of a sin offering is cooked must be broken. But if it's cooked in a copper vessel, it should be purged in boiling water to extract the absorbed flavor and rinsed with water. Every male among species may eat it. It's a most holy offering. Then the pasuk continues, and we had that what we said: if the blood enters into any sin offering, this blood was supposed to be put on the outer altar, and some of it was brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement in the sanctuary, is invalid and should not be eaten. Remember that halacha as well? Okay, that's going to come up today. That if the blood enters into the sanctuary, it invalidates the sacrifice if it's not supposed to. Okay, so we start off with if it's no, if it gets on the clothing, no. It's just the clothing needs to be washed inside the azar. That'll laundromat in the azar. Coin laundry, tokens, special kind of machzas shekel. Push the thing in. Okay. So afal pi she'ena kasav medaber ela b'nei chalais. The interesting Mishnah. It says even though really the pasuk is talking about the chatayis that are eaten, not the chatayis that are called chatas pnimius, not the chatayis that the blood is taken inside the sanctuary, which are burnt outside and not eaten. Shenemar, as it says, b'makom kadosh teyachal, as it says, it should be eaten in a holy place. Because if you look at the pasuk, pasuk Yud Ches says pasuk Yud Tes b'makom kadosh teyachal b'chatzara el mayed. Then if you go to pasuk Chaf Aleph. You go to pasuk Chaf, kol shikah b'sari yiktar she'yazim ala beged yad. So pasuk Yud Tes tells me that it's dealing with a chatas that's eaten. Pasuk Chaf tells me that if it goes on clothing, you have to wash the clothing. So really, we would say that it's only referring to chatas and necholas, those types of chatas. However, echad, it's like afal pike. Nevertheless, echad necholas v'echad pnimius tu'unis kibbus. Shenemar teres chatas terachs l'chol chatas. Even though it seems to be referring only to chatayis that are eaten, but because it says the word zois teres chatas, when it starts out in pasuk Yud Ches, right, in pasuk 18, so that we're dealing with pasukim 18, 19, and 20 here. 18 says zois teres chatas, which includes all the sacrifices. 19 says we're talking about the chatas that's eaten. Pasuk 20 says that if the blood spritzes on the garment, so you would think it's only talking about the one that's eaten, because as we said in 19. But if we go back to verse 18, it says Zaysteres Chatas, which includes all types of Chatas. So you probably have to wash it after Shabbos. Yeah. Okay. Chatas psula ein damatang kibas. Chatas is pasul, then you don't have to. If the blood from a pasul chatas spritzes on a garment, you don't have the same malacha. Whether it ever had an eligibility or whether not, it's exempt. We're going to see that this Rabbi Kiva is going to argue on this. Give me an example of something that was eligible at one time. It says, well, let's say the psul was only shalana, that it's the blood stayed overnight. I mean, yesterday it was perfectly fine. Today, it's a problem because today it's too late, and now the blood ends up spritzing on someone's. Why do you leave this blood here? And now it's spilled. So, but nevertheless,
if it stayed overnight, it's going to be wet enough to
let's say
spritz.
Let's say we actually when is the zman of it? I think it's alisa shachar when it's considered lan, or maybe it's sesek yechavim.
Dry up.
It depends how much blood, and then the bottom of it would still be
It would
wet.
have to be like a cup or something, because if not, it dries out.
That's
It's
what I'm
like a
saying.
pan,
Right.
it'll dry out.
Right. Well, you have to figure out a way how the Gemara was going to work. They told someone to stir the lemonade and
Centrifuges. They just put it.
mix it. Will give me an example of something that never was eligible. It was shechted with the wrong intention, or another wrong intention, either out of the allotted time, out of the allotted place, with that intention. You have to drop the word bizarko. Rashi explains that if people that weren't eligible received the blood, then it never had an eligibility, because immediately it was accepted by people that were puzzled. However, if you use the word bizarku, then what you're really saying is that after the blood was sprinkled, then it would require kibus. In other cases, it's just in this case that it won't, right? But the truth is that after the blood is sprinkled already, then it does not require kibus. It's only the blood that was sprinkled before kibus. That's what Rashi mentions here. What do you mean the blood puzzle? Makes it puzzle, and therefore the blood spritzes on a garment. It does not need to be washed because the blood is puzzle. Right? Yeah.
Sprinkling like nothing, it does count. If the sprinkling was done by somebody that wasn't
So
was nothing, so the Kohen was able to still do it.
I'm not sure. If it was sprinkled by someone that's puzzle. Did we say that someone else can go do it? It could be.
I remember like it was nothing.
Could be. Okay, so fine. But the problem over here is that what it means is we're saying that if the blood is sprinkled by someone that's puzzle, not sprinkled. If the blood is received by someone that's puzzle, then the sacrifice is impuzzle. The sacrifice is puzzle, and therefore the blood spritzes on a garment. It does not need to be washed. Now, yeah, you have to read that. But the main thing is that we're talking about the garment. The garment doesn't need to be washed. Now, there's a detail here because it says if the blood was sprinkled by someone that's puzzle, if the blood was received by someone that's puzzle, and there's another girsa, there's a parenthesis in the Mishnah that says, or if it was sprinkled by someone that's puzzle. So Rashi says that that's not possible. That can't be a correct girsa. Because what you're telling me is that if it was sprinkled by someone that's puzzle, then there's no problem with the garment. It doesn't need to be washed because it wasn't eligible, right? It was puzzle. But if it was puzzle, but if it wasn't puzzle, if it was sprinkled by someone who wasn't puzzle, then you would have to wash it, right? Rashi says, no, you don't. You don't have to wash it because once the blood is sprinkled, you don't have to wash it. So we're only dealing with the blood before it was sprinkled. So if you're telling me a contrast, the contrast can't be sprinkled by someone that was puzzle, because there would be no contrast to sprinkled by someone that was kosher. Both of them you don't have to wash the garment. So the halacha that we're learning here is that if it was received by someone that was puzzle, because that would be a difference between if he's puzzle or if he's kosher. If he's kosher, then you have to, right?
It's following the logic that the sprinkling completes it. So then,
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the Gemara. The Gemara says, "Dam chatas yav shemesa." There's another girsa here. Shemesa shenitas is supposed to say. Dam chatas shenitas, the blood of the chatas that was sprinkled. So the Mishnah said whether it's a chatas that's eaten, or whether it's a chatas that's brought inside, it doesn't matter. Blood needs kibbutz, and can we learn it from the garment needs to be washed, laundered, and we learn it from Zos Teres Chatas because this is the love of chatas. It's inclusive, and it adds in even the other chatas. The Gemara asks, if you want to tell me that there's one halacha for all chatas and all of the blood needs kibbutz, afilu chatas ha'oif nami. So then, which this should apply also to a chatas ha'oif, a bird, where the back of the neck is incision is made, right? And then, so let's say that blood from the bird ends up spritzing on the kohen's garment, so it would need to be washed there as well. Allah matanya, why was it taught in a brisa that yachal tehei dam chatas ha'oif on kibbutz? Maybe we should say the same law by dam chatas ha'oif. When it says Tamalai Mar Zos, it says no. Zos is an exclusion. This is the law of the chatas. This and not others, which means we're excluding something. So we exclude a bird. So if you're telling me Tairas, that should be inclusive. So why are you excluding it? Amar Rish Lakish, Shim Bar Kapara, Rish Lakish says the name of Bar Kapara. Amar Kra Tishachet. It says in the pasuk, in the place where the oila is slaughtered, the chata should be slaughtered. And when we're dealing with slaughtering, we're not only dealing with an animal, we're not dealing with the bird, because a bird isn't slaughtered, a bird is malika. Gemara says, maybe the pasuk is only talking about the sin offerings that are eaten, not the sin offerings that are.
And then it would include
that we're going to get to in a second. But right now, the Gemara is suggesting that maybe we should be excluding the chatas that the blood is brought inside the sanctuary, which is not eaten, those types of chatas. Yeah, we're dealing with the chatas. Yeah. Chatas is still attached. So, ve'im b'nechol skasam dabrik k'diksiv b'makayim kadesh tiachal aval chatas pnimis loy, but not the chatas pnimis. Only the one that's edible needs to be washed. And let's say that because we have the word b'makam kadesh tiachal. Well, the Gemara says, well, Rabbi Rachman Teiras, but the Torah says these are the laws, which is an inclusion, should include everything. So therefore, we're going to include also the chatas pnimis. So this is getting confusing here, because what you're doing, you have like a double standard. When it came to the bird, you said, oh, it says ice, we can't include that the garments don't need to be washed from the blood from the bird. Came to the chatas pnimis, which is not eaten, and it says clearly we're talking about the ones that are eaten. He said, well, it says teiras. So it's an inclusion. It's referring to that as well. It says miyat rachmana. So if Teiras is an inclusion, so why didn't you include the birds? So the Gemara says miyat rachmana zos, but it says zos, so we have to exclude the birds. So this is Mari Isa. So what made you so determined, or why are you so definite about including the other type of chatas pnimis, and excluding the bird? If you have one inclusion and one exclusion, what made you choose this one over that one? Maybe include the bird and exclude the the chatas pnimis. Mistabra, the Gemara answers, it's more logical. The chatas behema pnimis havli ribui, that we should include the animal chatas together with the other animal chatas. Shekain, because we're going to have 8. I think it's 8 points over here that are similar. 8 comparisons. First of all, behema, they're both animals. Second of all, shchita stuff, and they have to be slaughtered on the north, as opposed to the bird. The bird doesn't have to be slaughtered on the north; it's slaughtered on the mizbeach, on the east, not on the on the east side of the mizbeach. The kabbalas keli, the blood needs to be received in a vessel, as opposed to the oif, which the blood is not even put out on it. It's held in the bird, the body of the bird itself, right? And it's spritz from the bird. The carrot, the blood needs to be applied to the top corner of etzba. You have to use your finger to apply it. You don't use a bird itself, I guess. The chuda has to go on to the actual corner. The ishim, the limbs are burnt on the fire. The organs are burnt on the fire. Chatas ha'oif was not burnt at all on the fire. Chatas ha'oif was entirely eaten. Okay. Gemara says, Adarabba. 1 second, I get all your comparisons, but on the contrary, chatas ha'oif you shouldn't be including the chatas ha'oif. Why? Because the blood doesn't go into the sanctuary; it stays outside in the courtyard. It's also eaten. The chatas pnimis is not even eaten. It says, well, hanach nefishin. They win. They have more. There's more comparisons to the chatas chitzonis, to the chatas pnimis, than to the chatas chitzonis, to the chatas ha'oif. So the chatas ha'oif is excluded. Chatas pnimis is included. I have 2 words. I have the word tyras.
The bird is included or the bird is not?
The bird is excluded. I have the word tyras, and I have the word zeis. Tyras is the inclusion, zeis is the exclusion. So, and I have 2 things to include or to exclude. One is the chatas ha'oif, and one is the chatas pnimis. They say, let's use the chatas pnimis for tyras, to include it, and we'll exclude the chatas ha'oif with the word zeis. This is what made you do that. This is because there's more comparisons with the chatas pnimis to the chatas chitzonis than there are with the chatas chitzonis to the chatas ha'oif. Yeah. Birds, all birds in the Beis Hamikdash are malika. The only difference was if you severed the head. What happened? Oh, you're afraid it's going to turn into coffee? The miracle happened and the tea turned to coffee. Rabbi Yosef Amar, Rabbi Yosef says, Amar Kra Yechelena. You look at the pasuk. Which pasuk is this? Where does it say Yechelena? Vav Yud Aleph. You have to go back over here. You're in Vav. You have to go back almost 10 psukim, 8 psukim. It says, Kol Zachar Bnei Aaron Yechelena Chakal M'Darisechem Isha Hashem Kol She'iga B'hem Yikdash. And this is talking about the Karban Mincha. That doesn't make sense. Is that the pasuk that you have as well? Where do they quote the pasuk Yechelena from? 6:19. Yeah, much better. Much better. My Gemara quoted the wrong pasuk. Okay. The kohen who offers it up as a sin offering should eat it. Where does he eat it? He has to eat it in the Makom Kodesh. So this is where we learned that it was referring to that this is where we created the problem that this may be only referring to a chatas that's eaten, right? And now we had to use Tyrus to tell me it's referring to also a chatas that's not eaten, that the blood that sprinkles on a garment, spritzes on a garment, needs to be washed. But Rabbi Yosef says, I'll give you another reason why we're going to include the chatas pnimis, because the pasuk says yechlena. Now yechlena means you should eat it. Yeah. Lezu b'lei lacheres means specifically this. The law is going to apply, but not to another one. It's telling me that there is a type of edible chatas which is being excluded. Yechlena, you only eat it, but not something else. But what's the one that you're not going to eat? You're not going to eat that's the one that you're going to eat, that the law of spritzing the blood on the garment doesn't apply. It's something edible, that's the bird. So that's where we get that you exclude the bird. So the Gemara asks on Rabbi Yosef, so then why do we need the word Zeis? Zeis tells me this and not something else. You already had that. It says he loves Zeis, have amina yechlena or chidikra. I could have thought that yechlena is just a classic. Shouldn't yechlena be? Here we're using yechlena to be an object suffix instead of subject. I thought yechlena was a. How do you say like they ate it? Teichlena. It could be a plural you. Teichlena. You all. Right? Mm-hmm. Teichlena. You all should eat it.
Should eat it, right?
Now we're saying you should. No, but where's the it? Teichlena is the nun hey at the end in it, or that's if it's an object. So I thought it was part of the subject. Teichlena, like you say yoichlu. Yoichlu doesn't mean what you're eating; it just means you all should eat. Right. So for when you do that for feminine, it turns into teichlena.
That's received. And that's tochalna.
Oh, techalna. Okay. My daughter was asking me yesterday. There's a Hayamim that talks about chiyisani. You say chiyisani or chiyisani? The tillim. You see that Hayamim?
Oh my
Yeah. So she was asking me, what's the difference if you say chiyisani or chiyisani? No, I asked ChatGPT. So it says chiyisani means that you revived me. Chiyisani means you revived me. Chiyisani means you kept me alive. And then it gives me this whole pilpul on that's what we're trying to not just when we were dying and Hashem, but even for the natural life also. The whole.
It's a from.
They did a good job. They did a good job. And they said this is the main point of the Hayam. Oh, did they do that? I didn't know that. I haven't seen that yet. Okay. And then they're very encouraging to ask me any more dicta questions that I have. They finish up. Any more dicta questions, we'd love to help. Okay. So we say, what's the Zeis? The love Zeis have a mini Yechlena or Chidikra. Kamashmalan, the Zeis tells me that I have to be medayik from Yechlena and say that Yechlena is excluding the Chatasai. That's the answer of Rabbi Yosef. Now, Rabbah is a friend of Rabbi Yosef. And Rabbah became the Rosh Hashiva before Rabbi Yosef, right? 22 years, and then Rabbi Yosef took over afterwards.
Yeah, of course.
Rabbah Amar, that's the Rabbi Yosef was a short period. Rabbah Amar, Rabbah says, Amar Kra Asher Yiza. The reason why we're including the Chatas Pnimius and excluding the Oith is because the pasuk says that spritzes Asher Yiza. Asher Yiza midam ala beged. We're dealing with the type of animal that the blood needs to be sprinkled. Dealing with the type of animal the blood needs to be sprinkled, as opposed to the chatas ha'oif, that the blood is not sprinkled; it's squeezed against the wall. Right? That's connected, yeah. But Tanya, the Gemara asks a question, but it's actually supposed to be about the non in the Mishnah. Alpha Pishena Kasim Dabra Minachala is. We say we're talking about edible ones. Rabbah makes it look like we're dealing with all the animals, but not. We're only dealing with the one that was Chatas and Achalas, not the Chatas Pnimis. Which means that that when it says, when the Mishnah said that we're dealing with the one that's edible, and I need Torah Sachatas, Torah Achas L'chol Achatas to include the one that's not edible, the Chatas Pnimius. According to Rabbah's rejecting the whole Mishnah. Rabbah's saying that I know that it's referring to the Chatas Pnimius because it says Yazeh, because it says sprinkled. What about the Mishnah that says that we know it from Torahs, which is an inclusion? The Gemara says that L'inyan Riko Shtifa, there is a concept that's only referring to the Chatas and the Achalis, and that's referring to Mariko Shtifa. That means Mariko Shtifa is referring to further on in those psukim. It says that if you cook in an earthenware vessel, then you need to break it. If you cook in a copper vessel, then you have to wash it and rinse it and scrub it. So, what's the pasuk? Umayrak v'shutaf b'mayim. Imikli nechayshus bushalaf was cooked in a copper vessel. Umayrak v'shutaf b'mayim. It should be purged and rinsed with water. So that is referring to the ones that are eaten, because the one that's not eaten is not talking about, it doesn't need to be, it's not cooked at all, it's just totally burnt. Okay. But regarding kibas, that says, regarding the laundering, that it says only the ones that are sprinkled. And the ones that are sprinkled, which includes also the chatas pnimis. Yahachi, if that's the case, and which chatas would be the main one that would require kibas? Which one is sprinkled more? The one that goes inside, or the one that's outside? The one that goes inside. So now the term, when you say not only this but even that, gets lost over here, because it should be exactly the opposite. Not only the inner one, but even the outer one. The Gemara says, okay, that we can fix easy. Little whiteout and tani. We could just that in the Mishnah could be adjusted. If the halacha of kibas applies to the of laundering the right of washing the garment applies to the chatais that's sprinkled, then chatasayif nami, that's also sprinkled. It says miyat rachman azais. Now, is it actually sprinkled? Yes, I thought it was squeezed against the wall. No, actually, the oif. The oila saif was squeezed against the wall. This one is sprinkled. Sorry, this one is sprinkled. The attached was sprinkled. Yeah, I'm sorry, it was my mistake. No, the oila saif was squeezed. This one was sprinkled. Yeah. So the Gemara includes we should be including the oif as well. The Gemara says no. Miyat rachman azais. We already have an exclusion for it. Then we should exclude the outer sacrifice because it says zais. It says riba rachman atayras, but it says tayras, which is an inclusion. Amari Isa. So now it's not fair. What are you excluding one and including the other one? What made you decide this? It says mistabra. It's more logical. This is the exact Gemara that we had before, because it's behema, shchita stafan, kabbalas keli, keren, etzba, v'chud v'ishim. You have those 8 comparisons. What about the chatasayif that's also comparable to the chatas? Shekain hazah kamaisa, because it's sprinkled. We didn't do that before. Before we used shekain chutz kamaisa. Here we said Shekain hazak kamaisa, right? That it's sprinkled, because before we were talking about the chatas chitzainis, which was eaten. It said shekain chutz kamaisa v'achilasa kamaisa v'achila kamaisa. Now we're not doing that. Now we're doing that it's sprinkled kamaisa. So it says hanach navish, and 8 is more than 1. So that's what we're going to be. We're going to do that comparison and to have the inclusion. Now the Gemara is going to go through a bunch of questions, very interesting questions. Boy Rab Avin, and then Boy Mine Levi, Boy Ram Barchama, Merav Chisda, just a bunch of very interesting questions. The Gemara. We start with Boy Rab Avin, Chata Saif Shehichnes Dama Bitzavara Bifnim Mahu. You know that the sacrifice, the blood
is just like random questions.
Yeah, I mean on topic, but it's
yeah.
not specifically. It's about these psukim though. If the blood is supposed to be outside in the courtyard, it's not allowed to go inside the sanctuary. If it goes inside the sanctuary, it invalidates the chatas. We're asking now, Rav Avin's asking, let's say blood does enter inside the sanctuary, but not because you took the blood inside, but you took the whole bird inside. How do you get the blood inside? Because it was still in the neck, and you brought it inside. Tzavar kechli dami, is the neck considered like a keli? And just like if you bring it in a keli, because you don't use a keli by the bird, this is the keli. This is the neck is the keli. That's the container that it holds. And mifsal, therefore it should be puzzled just like a regular chatas that the blood goes inside to the echalei dilma ketzavar behema. Maybe it's just like the neck of an animal, and it doesn't become puzzle. Midamar rachman avlei besara. It says only if you bring the blood in, and it doesn't say the flesh. It doesn't say it becomes possible to bring the flesh in. No, the flesh has some blood in it, but it doesn't become possible to bring the flesh inside. So maybe this is not considered like independently held in a vessel. Maybe this is just considered the flesh. Well, Tashima, the Gemara says, let's see. The Shita Mikbetza says, Amar Rabba Tashima. Rabba is answering Rabban. Right? But over here, you never put it into a vessel. Hill is suggesting that the Gemara is asking the timing. Does it need to go into does it need to leave the animal and go into a vessel for it to be eligible to become pasul by entering in? Or is it even at an earlier stage also eligible for this psul? I was learning it, is it considered independent? I'm not sure where I got that from. I think I got it from Rashi. I think I was understanding it from the way the Gemara says Besara. It may be in the notes, it explains it differently. I was saying it says Besara meant Midama v'lei Besara, from the blood, but not from the flesh. But this is considered the flesh, which means that it's still like just part of the animal. And there was no problem if it was. Okay. So Tashima, or Amarabba Tashima. You say, let's say after you do malik on the bird, it's what's it called? When the wings still move and convulses.
Convulsive.
Very good. So it convulses and it actually ends up fluttering around and making its way into the heichal. Okay, this is actually our question. It's going to end up. So v'chazra, and then it leaves. It says ksheira, it's fine. So what we're medayik from this is, you see, it entered into the heichal, but this is only ha'ichnisa psula. Well, let's say you would actually bring it in that way, then maybe that would be puzzle. But why did you say that it's nothing? Because it went in without your involvement. The Gemara says, according to the way that you were just medayik here, that only if you did it, if you didn't do it, it would be kosher, but if you did it, would be puzzle. Then gabi kachi kachim, we have a law like this. It says that sacrifices that are extra holy, kachi kachim, they have to be slaughtered on the north. Diktani, it was taught, pirkus of yatzaladarim, let's say it convulses, and it ends up on the south. And it comes back to the north. So we say ksheira. It's kosher. If we're going to follow your logic and make diyukim the way you're doing, then look at what's going to happen. But if you moved it to the south, psula, it would be puzzle, and that's not true. They don't become puzzle. A sacrifice doesn't become puzzle when you move it over to the south. Ella, no. Once it has to be slaughtered on the north. Was it puzzle if it wasn't slaughtered on the north? Or was that just a din l'chatchila? I don't remember. I have a big chart. I have a big chart in here. Makim Ashchita. So fine. Let me see, 31, 32. Yeah, what happens if you don't? Doesn't give me that. Okay. So yeah, that's if it leaves the courtyard. Yeah, that's if it leaves the courtyard. That's coming up next. That's that we didn't touch yet. So, so the Gemara answers this. It says, "Elahai Tana, Elahai Yatza Salachutz Tzrichalei." Really, what we're doing over here is we're saying that there is a main point over here, and everything else is secondary. The main point that we want to do is we want to say that if it flutters and it goes outside the actual courtyard, then whether you brought it outside or you didn't bring it outside, that becomes invalid. Even if it wasn't, there was no human intervention in that, there was no involvement. But hachanami. So here also, when we're talking about the chatas ha'oif, all we're really saying is that if it leaves the courtyard, that becomes a problem. So you can't be medayak, but if you would bring it inside the sanctuary, and that wasn't our point. You can't be medayak from the secondary things. The main point over here was that if it leaves, it's puzzle, but if it doesn't leave, it goes inside, then it's going to be kosher. Now, what you're trying to do is be medayak, but if you brought it in, as opposed to that wasn't the diak, that wasn't the emphasis, right? You have to put the emphasis correctly. The emphasis was leaving the courtyard versus entering into the heichal. Yeah, leaving the courtyard is puzzle. Entering the heichal is going to be kosher. It doesn't have to do with you did it or not. That wasn't our emphasis. Okay, Boy Rav Avin, you have another question here.
So what's the answer to it?
The Gemara doesn't answer.
So it's just going to be a list of questions.
Yeah, I think so. Boy Rav Avin, in your Gemara, in the English side, they may have the halacha that will say how we paskin or how the Rambam paskins. Boy Rav Avin, Nishbach al ritzpa v'asfa mahu. Let's say the blood fell onto the floor of the chatas ha'oif, specifically a chatas ha'oif. Now remember, a chatas ha'oif doesn't use a keli. You sprinkle it from the neck of the bird itself. So let's say the blood spilt on the floor. What's the din? Is it just that the Eibishter, the Rachmana, merciful one, doesn't require you to use a keli? Therefore, what would come out from that is, well, you don't need a keli. It's a big deal. It's spilt on the floor. You just pick it up and you just. In other words, it was a leniency that you don't need any keli. The keli doesn't matter. Or perhaps maybe the Torah. It's not that a keli doesn't matter. The Torah doesn't allow you to use a keli. Is it definitely not, or is it not definitely? Or not necessarily, right? They would say this in Hebrew. They would say, "Lav dafka." They say, "Lav dafka" or "Dafka lav." It says over here, is it "Lav dafka keli" or is it "Dafka lav"? Specifically, no keli. Yamar Rava Tashma. Rava says, "Come and listen." You want to pass me a tissue? Yeah. Thank you.
Control.
Yamar Rava Tashma. Yochel Yedam Chatas Oif Ton Kibbutz. The Brisa says that maybe the Chatas Oif, if the blood, it does say the halachas. And are those to responding? Are those on Rav Avin's questions? Oh, okay. No, that wasn't one of the questions. That was just one of the interesting. All right. Okay, so it says I could have thought that maybe the blood of the chatasayif needs to be laundered also if it spritzes on a garment. So we exclude it from the word zayis. It says this, only this, and not something else. And if it would enter your mind to say that it becomes puzzle if it uses a keli, so 1 second. You told me that once the blood is puzzle, then you don't need to launder it, right? Now, right when it comes onto the garment is considered a keli, right? Clothing in the Mishnah is actually called kalim, right? So, typically the ifsalei ba'avir keli, and not only it became possible with the avir keli when it came into the airspace. Maybe say there was a little fold in the garment, I guess. The ear right above the garment, it would be puzzled. Then when it touches the garment, the blood is already puzzled. And we learned that if the blood is puzzled, then you don't need to launder it. Rav Yeshua says, yeah, this is the type of question we could resolve that you didn't get the case. B'mad b'keli b'tzavara. We're talking about where you stuck the garment onto the neck, so it wasn't puzzled beforehand. There was only from the neck onto the garment. So it never had a chance to become puzzled, but going over the garment and becoming puzzled before. It was directly.
There was no airspace.
There was no airspace. You put the garment on top, like that, on top of the neck. Okay. Boy minei Levi mi Rebbe. Yeah, we can do another one. I added in Rebbe was added on the side. That Levi asked Rebbe the following question. You have Levi in brackets over there? Not in the original text. That's just in translation.
We have a question.
There were 2 students. Wasn't there a Gemara that they would bother Rebbe with questions? I don't remember. I don't know. So Levi asked Rebbe a question. Nitas mi beged lebeged. Let's say it went from one garment, it spritzed on one garment, and it bounced off that and went on the other garment. You know those nice tablecloths where it doesn't absorb. So anyway, it spritzed from one to another. So mi beged kamid chlei lekibas. It goes like this. Since once it goes on the first garment, it's not eligible to be sprinkled anymore, right? Because only blood that's eligible to be sprinkled, you have to launder it in the place. But here it's already pushed off. I don't malai, or maybe we don't say that because it went on the first garment, so therefore it's chalei mikibus. It was pushed off, and now the second garment you don't have to wash. Amar lei, Rebbe tells him zu shaila. I like your question. A good question. However, I have an answer. That's how you're supposed to answer questions, by the way. Oh, it's an excellent question. Yeah, but here's the answer. Oh, Rebbe? Nevertheless, he still has to do this properly. Still has to teach the Gemara properly. Teach the lesson. Anyway, so it says, that's a good question. Ton kibas mimanavshach. It says it definitely needs kibas. If we say that if it falls on the floor, if it says if you not falls on the floor, if you would collect it, and it would still be kosher to sprinkle, kosher. So then good. Then you'd have to wash it because the blood was kosher. Yes, if it's puzzle, then anakar Rabbi Akiva's really. I hold like Rabbi Akiva, which I mentioned when we learned the Mishnah that Rabbi Akiva's opinion was going to be different. Damar Haisalai Shasa Kaisher, that if it had a time that it was eligible, Benifsal and becomes possible later, Damaton Kibas. We introduced this new opinion. It says that since it was eligible at one time, then it's going to be require laundry after. So from one garment to another garment is still going to be require kibas. Okay, we're right on the top. That's a new piece. Okay, have a good day, everyone.
Well done.